Hi YouTube, this is a walkthrough of THM's Easy Room Empire. I already finished all tasks, so first let's start with attack box and starting the target machine, which is blue in this case. This room is filled with blue spoilers, so I recommend you finish and be familiar first with the blue room from Darkstar and then continue with this room. So I'll also expect you to already read the instructions in this room. I will just power through the text and focus on the main hands-on tasks. So the target is here blue, and we are waiting the machine to initialize. Then after the instruction we have to deploy blue and learn what exploit this box is susceptible to, and get a reverse shell. So we will power through this exploitation of the target and not focus on the details, but you'll see some spoilers. There will be some spoilers. So first you finish the room blue. While we are waiting for machine to initializes, we'll go quickly through the instructions. We here have an instruction on how to install Empire and Starkiller graphical user interface, but since we are using here embedded attack box machine, we will use another method of installation with the Docker container and not with git clone as mentioned here for the Empire, because the attack box here uses an older version of Ubuntu, and we don't want to waste time on frameworks dependencies, and we will just use the container, and everything will be available inside the container. So machine is initialized, and we can start with scanning the target machine with Nmap. We will use switches SCSV and script for detecting vulnerabilities, and map script vul, and we will use target's IP address, and we will also use very verbose output. So we will check to see which ports are open and if the script will detect the vulnerability, the main vulnerability on what we will focus on. So until we wait for the scan to finish, we will open a new terminal tab and check the Docker status. Let's double check if the Docker is already installed. If we run the Docker command, we will see if we get any errors or if we get an output with helpful commands. Yeah, we see we have some commands here mentioned, so we have Docker installed. Let's continue with pulling the latest BC Security Empire image. Copy, paste to the clipboard, and from the clipboard to the target machine. Docker pull BC Security / Empire latest version. So the container is now downloading, and in the meantime nmap is still running. Basically, you should already know what vulnerability we expect here to see, what main port, and related to the service and the version of operating system of the target. Next, after installation, we'll read up on a menu overview, what to expect next to see when we install Starkiller. We don't have to answer anything in this task. Read the above and get familiar with the Starkiller menu. Okay, as soon as we install it. Listeners are used in Empire similar to how they are used in any other normal listener like Netcat and multi-handler. Make a pause if needed and read the whole instructions. Stagers. Okay, we have an nmap scan finished. Okay, we're now reading the output, and you should be able to recognize what vulnerability we will focus on here. So we will focus on we see open port, state service, reason, version, and vulnerabilities, reported vulnerability details. So it's SMB vulnerability MS1710. Machine is vulnerable to remote code execution. Microsoft SMB version 1 servers. Okay, let's exploit that vulnerability now using Metasploit framework. We are running the command msf console-q. While we are waiting on that, let's get an overview of upcoming tasks. Listeners, stagers, agents. Modules. So basically modules is the first task where we have to answer some questions. Task 9 plugins. No answers needed here also. And task 10 traditional conclusions. No answers needed. Okay, we have the Docker is container is for Empire is downloaded. We have to now run the server. And the Empire server needs port 1317 and 5000 open. And as a pass-through between container and host machine, which is a tech box in this case, we will additionally use ports 9000 and 10,000 here. 9000 for the listener instead of that port 53, and we will see now why. These are just 9000, 10,000 are pretty much random ports which are not well known and are available to use. So basically, one of the tasks stated we have to prepare a listener on port 53, but if we try here to bind port 53 between the container and the tag box, we will get this output. An error stating listen TCP on port 53 bind address already is in use. And also to check what is is there any other port secret we can use. Okay, it's stated as 7777 on the container and is mapped on 8000 port on the tag box. Okay, we will go around that and use these two, 9000 and 10,000. 9000 for the listener and 10,000 for maybe putting up a web server between the container host and to upload something if when needed on a target machine. So we are running the Empire server and the server is ran successfully. So we can now run the client against the already running server container. Copy paste command from the BC Security Gitbook. So we here have 0 error but 27 warnings from the server. Build succeeded, so no need to worry right now. And let's just continue with running the Empire terminal client. Let's see which image Docker containers are active currently. We have this BC Security Empire container running and we will need its ID. Copy paste in the command for the Empire client. Okay, we have, looks good. We have a client running, attempting to connect to the server localhost, looks good. So basically we did not use the installation instructions from the room description, but we use the Docker container. So far so good. Empire client, terminal client is active, and okay, we will now go back to see what's the state on the target machine. Okay, so we are now in the Metasploit console. We will search that stated vulnerability of the target MS1710, and we should be able to recognize that we should try first with this exploit terminal blue. We will use 2. Under that number is that exploit. We need to configure details. So under the options, we should set our hosts according to the target's IP address. And just run the exploit against the blue machine. Okay, we get an output. Host is likely vulnerable. Interpreter session 1 opened, and we have a win. We are in interpreter shell. So let's run some basic command like sysinfo. Okay, and let's just quickly run hash dump. So we have some usernames and password hashes. Run shell, so we get a Windows shell. See Windows System 32, who am I? And we are anti-authority /system. Okay, that will be it for now with the target. And let's jump to the installing Starkiller. We'll install it onto the attack box in directory opt. We will use the mentioned link for the Starkiller. We'll use this 190 app image, copy link, and we will download it onto the attack box. So basically we are running Empire server and client from the Docker container, and Starkiller we are installing, we will run from the attack box machine. We will need a new tab. We're already using 2 tabs for the terminal Empire client and server, one for the interpreter, and the 4th now tab we will use for downloading the Starkiller graphical user interface. Okay, let's double check the directory content. Okay, we have an older also here version of the Starkiller app image, but we will use the one we just now downloaded. So we will change the permissions on the app image to make it executable. And now we see the permissions are suitable, and we will proceed to executing this Starkiller app image. Default credential mentioned. Okay, we have some output stating running as root without no sandbox is not supported. So let's try, because we are root in this attack box, let's try adding this switch no sandbox and see if it helps. So basically this switch is not mentioned here in the instructions, but like with everything and all kinds of distributions, you always, when you read the instructions, uh, uh, attached instructions, you always have to read up on if there's anything maybe changed in new versions. And of course, read up on terminal outputs. So we have something happening. Looks like Starkiller is graphical user interface is loading, and we're in. So let's enter the password 123, default password, submit, username Empire agent, Empire admin, on localhost, and port 1337. So that's why we mapped that port 1337. So let's get a feel of the graphical user interface. I expect you to read up on instructions in all these tasks. Modules. Okay, we have almost 400 modules available in this version of server. Credentials, we don't have any credentials. This is a new install. Reporting, also empty. Users, we have one user, Empire admin. Plugins, we have 3 plugins. Settings, and about. Starkiller is developed by BC Security. If you would like to contribute, please visit our GitHub. Okay, no answers needed. Get familiar with the Starkiller menu. Next task 5, listeners. Listeners are used in Empire similar to how they are used in any other normal listener like Netcat and multi-handler. Okay, HTTP to listen on specific port. So read up every instruction mentioned here and pause if needed, and let's continue after that. So we should create a listener, HTTP one, and change the host and host port. No answers needed, so create an HTTP listener. We have to be in the listeners tab, create, new listener, HTTP type. Okay, we see author, information about author, the listener, comments, and additional fields. Okay, we will perm instructions focus here on host IP, which is our tech box IP, stated in the upper right corner, 10.10.1891. And the port we planned for this purpose is 9000. We won't change these other options, but just to overview them. Okay, we will now submit these settings for the listeners, and we get failed to validate listener HTTP options. So let's try with deleting the HTTP prefix and submit again. Let's try with that. Click the port, and we have a new listener, HTTP started. Let's double check it in the listeners menu. Okay, we have something here which was not here previously. Created a few seconds ago. Listener, adequate host IP address and port. Okay, let's move on. Stagers, task 6. Read up on the stages instructions, stagers instructions, and I'll see you in the hands-on part of the task. Generate stager, Windows launcher bat, and set the listener to the one you made in the previous task. After that, download or copy and paste the stager to the target machine. So in the stagers menu, create a new stager. Type should be, as mentioned, Windows Launcher bat. And we have to set the listener as previously set up HTTP listener, and that's the only thing we'll change right now, but you should get a feel of the other optional settings in this tab. Let's see some additional info about case author comments, description, and we created the stager. We will now proceed to download the stager onto our attack box. Basically, we only have to download this stager onto the target machine. We can do that in several ways, but we will here use this action button, and we have an option to download the launcher bat stager onto our attack box. We will download it into the temp folder. So basically, when we download this the stager, we can host it and download it onto the target using the Python 3 server as mentioned in room instructions. But we will use Meterpreter, an option in Meterpreter directly to using command upload to get this stager onto the target machine. Basically, from the blue room, we should be familiar with the directory structure of this of the target. We will go into administrators documents directory, and we will put the stager over there and run it from there. Okay, we are now in C directory. We will cd change directory to users and find administrator, ls to see the content of the folder, and we will go into John directory, ls to see the contents directory, and we will go into his documents directory, see what we have there. Okay, we have some flags, flag text, but I won't spoil much. You will need that for the blue room, but let's focus here on uploading, not uploading, the launcher bat to this folder. So upload /temp/launcher bat to destination C users John documents launcher bat. So correct should be documents. Okay, now looks good. Let's run it. And we have something. Looks good. ls. And we have launcher now available on the target. Let's running from the interpreter using the command execute -f launcher bat. And we have a process created. So now we see after mentioned in the room instruction, after executing the stager, if you correctly set up both the stager and the listener, then the agent will check back in the agents tab. Previously we did not have anything in the stagers tab in the showing in star killer. So let's see what's the state of that now. We don't have any answers. uh, uh, we don't need to answer anything in this task. Okay, we now in agents tab we see we have an agent with its name, when it's seen, host name. Okay, we'll now focus on next task using agents. Agents are used within Starkiller similar to how you would interact with a normal shell or terminal. So read up on all instructions of the room, and now pause when needed. And now let's hop into a hands-on part. We clicked on the agent's name, and now we have these tabs available. Okay, we don't have to answer anything, and let's run the command stated in this instruction. Who am I? So basically it's mentioned in the instruction underneath the execute module section is where the output for both shell commands and modules will appear, but in this version we see under the tasks mentioned who am I. Okay, file browser view, and let's go back in tasks tab to see if we have a result of that command running. Yeah, we have a result anti-authority system. So that's all. That's good for this task. Next task, modules. Modules are used in Empire as a way of packaging tools and exploits to be easily used with agents. We have several modules here mentioned. MITRE framework and techniques ID. Naming convention. Okay, using modules. Let's proceed onto that part. We have we see mentioned the seat belt, then WinPiece module. Okay, and if I remember correctly, this is the only task with answers needed. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, we see here correct answers, but let's focus on how to find them. Now switching on to modules tab. In Starkiller, we see here almost 400 modules, their language, background, and MITRE naming convention, MITRE technique naming convention. So let's search the mentioned modules like seatbelt. Okay, we have two outputs, PowerShell and C#. Let's try the PowerShell one. We chose the module. Let's chain it to the agent. We have only one agent. Let's try to submit that, and we get an error. Module requires a PowerShell version 4, but agent running PS version 2, so we have some compatibility issues. With this setup, I would recommend trying this on your own, offline with your own virtual machine, be it Parrot, Kali, what say you, and offline version of the Blue Target machine, and see what happens. Then let's continue with searching WinPiece. We have one result. Okay, this module, let's chain it to the agent. We have only one agent. we won't change anything else. Let's try to submit it. Okay, we have the same error stating compatibility issues. So basically we have to answer these uh, 4 questions essentially. This one needs no answer from us. So let's search for Mimikatz. What module allows you to use any Mimikatz command and what MITRE technique is associated. So when we search for it, we get this output and we read up on information about this module, PowerShell credentials, Mimikatz command. Okay, does not need a technique naming ID, but the module PowerShell Trollsploit voice troll. Let's try to find it. Let's search for PowerShell Trollsploit. Okay, we have here Rick Astley, Rick Asky, but we won't focus on those modules. Okay, we got it, voice, added voice, and we get the correct answer. And the technique is T1491. Next question, what module implants a keylogger on the device? So let's search for keylogger. And we have a PowerShell collection keylogger. Let's read up on its description. And the answer here is technique. Technique ID T1056. And read the above and move on to using plugins. So we will try one more thing. Among these almost 400 available modules right now, we have a screenshot module. So we will try to take a screenshot of the blue target, attach the module to the agent, and let's submit. Okay, we don't have any errors, module execution queued. So let's go back to the agents and it executed tasks to see if we have that task available in that tab. Task mentioning screenshot. Get screenshot. We have it there. Okay, so we should have a screenshot of the target available somewhere inside the Empire server. So basically, because the Empire is here installed within a Docker container, we will go inside that Docker container to find that to find and see that screenshot. So let's list the running Docker images. Yeah, we get that container ID of the Empire which we are currently using. So let's go into the Docker bin bash shell with the command docker exec -it container ID, and let's hop onto bin bash. So we are in, and let's list the current directory, cd into Empire, ls. Let's switch to the server directory. In the server directory we have a downloads folder, and let's switch into that. There we have one folder, looks like the name of the agent. Let's switch into that, and we have a get screenshot folder, and there we have, yeah, we have a PNG file, image file, and now we are in the container, and from here we don't have available some of the commands for opening this image, like EOG, for example, but we can use that binded port 10,000 between the container and the attack box host machine. Okay, we are now serving that image onto web server on port 10,000, localhost port 10,000. So we expect to see a PNG file served there. Let's double check what we have there. So now from the attack box, we open Firefox. Open Firefox and trying to type correctly address where we expect to see that screenshot hosted. So this is not a must to do, just something that I thought it will be good to try and to see if all modules report an error or maybe some. So we saw that this module did not, when executed, did not submitted, it did not report an error, just executed with not compatibility issues. So we have to be a bit patient here and wait. We don't have any errors reported, so looks good, just we have to wait a bit. Okay, we have a now directory listing, and we now see we have a PNG extension file with PNG extension hosted there, but okay, we don't see anything sensitive. We have an option to save this image. Okay, we tried to get a screenshot of our target with this module. We didn't get any errors. Let's move on. We don't need this Python server hosting this image anymore. Let's bring it down and let's continue with using plugins. So basically read up on these instructions. Plugins are an extension of the base set of modules that Empire comes with. To use a plugin, transfer a plugin Python file to the plugins directory of Empire. Okay, and one of the plugins is available here on the BC Security GitHub page. Okay, we will download that plugin and try to recreate the image from the room instructions. So we'll get the address of the plugin and download it using wget. So we have to put it into the plugin folder of the Empire server, and as stated several times, Empire server we here installed inside a Docker container. So we have to put this plugin inside the Docker container. Let's switch to the plugin directory. So that's Empire server, plugins, and there we have already those three plugins we already saw mentioned in Starkiller. Now we will download this one, the fourth and it should be the fourth one available. So basically we are now downloading it directly in the container using wget. Okay, looks like it's saved. Let's double check that. Directory content with permissions. Okay, we have it. It's downloaded. SOX proxy server Python. It's here now. So let's try. Try to use it. So let's see if the Empire sees it, and Starkiller also. So let's switch on to Empire Terminal, client terminal, and list the plugins. Now we have also again we have just 3 plugins available. So the Empire Terminal client does not see it, and the Starkiller. Switch into plugin tab, and we have yet again 3 plugins. We don't have this one we just downloaded. So basically what that leads to the conclusion we have to bring the server down, and when we put it up again it should be able to see this newly downloaded plugin. But the issue here we have is that now we installed we put the plugin into a Docker container, and when we stop the Docker container, so stop the server, stop the container from running, we will lose this download. That's the thing with the containers. When we stop them from when we stop them from running on our machine, they get to their original downloaded state. So this change we made with downloading this plugin is not permanent. We have to save the to make this plugin available inside of the Empire server and Starkiller graphical user interface. We have to save the state of the already running container with a new name, and we have to make the whole new container available inside our host machine, which is in this case a tech box. So we stop the container from running everywhere. We stop the server client, exited the container, but we will now run it again to confirm that okay, we stopped the container from running, but now when we run it again and switch to that plugins folder again, we will not see that SOX proxy server plugin that we downloaded a few minutes ago. Basically the container reverted to its original state when we downloaded the container from the online Docker repository. So let's get into container and into its bin bash shell. The docker exec -it container id bin bash. Let's cd into Empire server plugins, and there I'm just preparing to download the plugin again, because as we will now see, when we list the contents of this directory and compare with the previous directory listing, we don't have here SOX proxy server plugin available. So to correct that, to make that plugin available, we will, after we download the plugin, we will commit this this stage of this container and make it available under another name locally on our attack box. So basically we have this ID of the container. So now we will save the state of this running container. So to repeat, the point is to have the container already running, and that's the way to save the new state, to save the new state of the container as a new Docker image. And let's do that now with the command docker commit container ID and the new Docker image name with the similar naming convention, pretty much the same naming convention as that of the BC security / empire and the version tag. We will here use cc connected / test image and the version, for example, 1. So it looks like we got a new image. Let's double check it with the command docker images. Okay, we have now listed, we have available cc connected / test image container with the tag version 1. That looks great. And now we will use that docker image for the Empire server, which should contain our newly downloaded plugin. So we will basically put this image BC Security Empire down. This image does not contain the newly downloaded plugin. Okay, we will run the server Empire server command, but using the Docker image with the plugin in it. So same command, but with another Docker image. Okay, let's run it. Loading default config. Okay, this already looks good. Loading stagers, loading modules. Basically, we could, if it's all good, we could upload this image online, publicly available Docker container repository, but that's outside of the scope of this room. Just mention as an idea to practice on your own. This task is focused onto terminal, Empire terminal client. You use not Starkiller, but we will double check also what's happening in Starkiller also, and if it's C the plugin. So basically server looks great, compiler ready, server terminal, and let's run the client terminal, Empire terminal client, but with the plugin. So we will use the cc connected Docker image. We need this container ID. So we use command docker exec it container ID ps run ps empire as client. Welcome to the Empire. Okay, looks great. Attempting to connect to server localhost. Great, we are connected to localhost and we get Empire terminal client. So now let's double check what's happening with Starkiller. So we switch on in our attack box to the opt directory, run Starkiller once again. But now we are running it against the Empire server, which should contain the plugin. So we should see plugins. Okay, we now see something that looks like an error because we did not get an option to log in, and we don't see the tabs we expect to see. So we can exit this. We can exit the Starkiller, but we will see just what can we find in these tabs to maybe solve the problem. Okay, let's try with reload. Okay, we are switched to the login page. Password, we enter the previous password, submit, and we are in. We see the tabs we expect to see. Okay, we now have the SOX proxy server available, and we see its descriptions. Author looks great. So Starkiller is now recognized the plugin, and let's switch to the Empire client terminal and proceed according to the room's instructions. So let's list the available plugins. Great, we now see available 4 plugins. We see the newly installed SOX proxy server. Let's try and use that plugin. And we will set its status to start. We see output set status to start. Let's execute. SOX server listening on 1080. SOX proxy server started. Okay, we see the same output as per room instructions, and we will leave it on that. Just stop the plugin from running, and that's all for this task. That's great. And let's just see what's happening inside of the server, Empire server. Looks good. Output looks good. So that would be all. And task 10 conclusion. For in-depth information, check out the BC Security website. If you enjoyed this walkthrough, please like and subscribe. Until next time.